Good news in the battle against sex trafficking. Christian ministries and other nonprofits are exploring new strategies in the fight, especially to help the victims.
One of the greatest needs is for shelters to provide safety and security. Heather Sells reports on a recent milestone in the anti-trafficking movement.
Traffickers in the U.S. exploit more than 100,000 children every year. But even if the victims manage to escape, there's often nowhere for them to go. Across the country, there's only residential care available for less than 100 survivors.
The anti-trafficking movement is just beginning in many ways, and so there's still not a clear understanding of the best way to help victims and what is out there available to them. That's why advocates from around the country gathered in Washington recently to define what is available and the smartest way to help victims.
If you think about it, here is a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl, and she is being violated 8 to 10 times a night by a grown man. And can you imagine what that does to her emotionally, mentally, and physically?
Mary Frances Boley founded one of the country's first trafficking shelters in 2001. She and other advocates say comprehensive care is needed to begin to help victims overcome the deep trauma that they've endured. At a minimum, that means residential care, therapy, and education. Rachel Lloyd has run a shelter in New York for 15 years. She says informed staff is key.
You have to have staff who are trained and understand the issue. You need to have survivors on staff. You need to have folks who have had the same experience.
The recent conference, sponsored by Shared Hope International, drew youth workers, ministries, and government agencies. Those attending say their gathering alone represents a shift because for years, the tragedy of trafficking fell under the radar for most Americans.
Years ago, you wouldn't have filled up this room this way, and now, we filled up this room and it's on webcast, and people around the world, around the country are really paying attention.
But Lloyd and others also caution the work has just started.
In the last probably 2 years, we've seen increase, and now we're beginning to see people wanting to develop services, but we still have a really long way to go from awareness to actually bricks and mortar.
George Sheldon runs a U.S. agency protecting children and families, and he admits the federal government is late to the cause. Anti-trafficking advocates say they don't expect much from the feds in this economy, but Sheldon says Health and Human Services is moving to develop a response and to help law enforcement.
If you're going to prosecute a trafficker, you have to have a willing victim who feels safe and secure.
Creating safety and security for victims is expensive, and detailed planning is needed to start up comprehensive care. But advocates say it's worth it because a desperate need exists and thousands of lives are at stake. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, safety and security are key issues, and providing that in a ongoing basis to victims of trafficking is an absolute need. Anyone who's ever been involved with women's shelters knows how important safety is for those who have been abused. And here you have underage girls being involved in sex trafficking. They need to be safe and secure, and that's the only way you're going to get successful prosecution of the traffickers. So we all need to be invested in this, and it's wonderful the church and other nonprofits are waking up to the need. The nation pauses today to remember the victims of Sandy Hook's the school shooting. Jennifer Wishon has more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Jennifer?
Gordon, 1 week ago today, a gunman opened fire at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. People across the state held a moment of silence this morning. Places of worship ringing their bells 26 times for the 20 children and 6 adults killed at the school. President Obama, officials and clergy across the nation also pausing to remember the victims. 4 children and 2 teachers were laid to rest Thursday. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan honored teacher Anne Marie Murphy for her sacrifice. He said what she did was like Jesus because she'd laid down her life for her students. Here in Washington, House leaders gave up on trying to pass their Plan B alternative to a fiscal cliff deal. House Speaker John Boehner came up with the idea to protect 99% of Americans from tax hikes on January 1st, but he couldn't rally enough support to pass it. Paul Strand tells us why the GOP leader was pushing the unpopular measure.
With the odds low for a deal to avoid the fiscal cliff, House Speaker John Boehner says he felt he had to move ahead with Plan B to stop taxes going up on everyone but millionaires. Democrats like New York's Chuck Schumer say no way.
It's the wrong approach. Even if the House passes it, it will be dead on arrival in the Senate.
Rather than tell us what they can't do, maybe they should tell us what they can do. When the Senate Democrats and the White House refuse to act, they'll be responsible for the largest tax cut in American history.
But Boehner's been savaged by conservatives who insist Republicans should stand on principle and not vote for any Americans' taxes to go up.
Tax increases don't solve the problem. Every single tax increase has led to more spending.
Meanwhile, liberals are worried about spending cuts proposed in fiscal cliff negotiations and Plan B.
Those unjust cuts would leave millions struggling to pay their bills and put food on the table.
Sister Rochelle Friedman, part of the group Nuns on the Bus, is asking Congress to hike taxes on the rich, not
cut programs which really are the lifeline for many people who in this economic time have been impacted by unemployment and all sorts of things.
Meanwhile, conservatives say a fiscal cliff deal can still be had, but only if tax hikes are out.
The American people did not re-elect the conservative House of Representatives to become tax collectors for Barack Obama's welfare state.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
A new defense bill protects military chaplains who refuse to perform same-sex marriages. The bill passed the House and is now before the Senate. A prior version banned gay marriage on military installations, but that provision was tossed out in negotiations. The final version says military chaplains can't be forced to perform such unions or be punished for refusing to do so. It also protects the rights of other military members who believe homosexuality is wrong due to religious or moral beliefs. Well, every Christmas, NORAD tracks Santa's progress as he delivers gifts around the world. Now, for the first time, we can also track who's following the true reason for the season. The creators of a hugely popular Bible app created a fun way to track the number of times people are reading the Christmas story. YouVersion is the name of the free Bible app. The app keeps a running tally of everyone in the world who reads the story of the birth of Jesus. Each time a reader clicks on the story, a star lights up on the site's world map, and the ticker grows by one more soul. So far, more than 5.5 million people have read the Christmas story through YouVersion. Well, so far so good. We're all still here, and the world has not ended, despite all the talk about an ancient Mayan Doomsday prediction. Ephraim Graham has more.
Today is the day the Mayan calendar ends, and along with it, the world, at least according to a 5,000-year-old prophecy. A recent survey found 6 million Americans believe it to be true. Ancient prophecy meets modern anxieties.
Some people, really respond with fear to uncertainty, things they can't predict. And indeed, there are media reports of cataclysms, tsunamis, things of that nature that get people guessing at the end of the world. Now you add the Mayan calendar thing, which may be misinterpreted by many, and this just fuels the fire for people who are anxious about those sorts of things.
People around the world are reacting to the prediction differently. In Mexico, thousands of tourists and believers are flocking to the Mayan ruins. In France, several hundred people are in the village of Bucarac. It's rumored to be the sole place on Earth that will escape destruction. A giant UFO and an alien crew are said to be waiting under a nearby mountain, ready to take those nearby to safety. Here in the U.S., some people say they've been preparing for the apocalypse for some time.
I'm pretty ready, more ready than the average person. I got 100 pounds of rice, 50 pounds of sugar, 50 pounds of flour. Got 3 wells on my property, so I'm ready to hunker down.
NASA has received so many panic calls, they released a video to reassure people.
It will be a day just like any other.
But a majority aren't taking the news seriously.
The world supposed to come to the end. Nah, I died.
No,
we ain't worried.
I'm not gonna worry about that.
The Bible don't say nothing about what time or what date, so whoever came up with that, I have no idea.
CBN chaplain Joel Palzer says Christians can take this day as an opportunity to reach out to people.
Scripture says, Jesus says, I'm with you even to the end of the age. So we have the promise of the presence of Jesus, and fundamentally, we're illustrating, we're showing another lifestyle.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
When asked how people would spend their last moment if it were in fact the end of the world, Gordon, the majority said they would spend it with family.
And that's where I was this morning with family. As the household awakened, I was comforted with this word from Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. And this is a prophecy you can believe in. This is the promise of God. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. And that was the verse that got me up this morning, and I enjoyed watching the dawn.
The final vote on Egypt's new Islamist constitution is this weekend. Supporters of President Mohamed Morsi and his opponents are clashing in the streets. Islamic radicals are gathered in support of the new constitution. The opposition says the draft will oppress minorities and lead to more violence. Christians in southern Egypt say they've been intimidated and blocked from voting by the Muslim Brotherhood. Residents in some villages say they were pelted by stones when they tried to vote last weekend. Operation Blessing is teaming up with a local co-op in Breezy Point, New York, to bring Christmas to the area devastated by Superstorm Sandy. On Saturday, Operation Blessing hosts the first large community event in Breezy Point since the storm. Families and children will be given a hot meal, Christmas cookies, treats, and brand new toys. Volunteers worked all week setting up Santa's workshops, stocking toys, and wrapping gifts leading up to the big event. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to their website at ob.org.